How does it feel to be here now that in the first big Strikeforce event after Zuffa took control of it? I mean, how different does it feel?
It feels great that I got the marketing machine of the MMA behind me already. You know, Strikeforce is always great. I'm happy to be a part of it, but I can already feel a little bit more fans engaging, and for instance, this open workout is something that it's new for us, and I don't think we really had it so much. Oh, actually we had it in Strikeforce quite a bit, to be honest. But just there's a lot of people on staff right here. A lot of things are like to the T. It's a lot of structure right here. People mean business right now, so it's cool. But more than anything, like I've just seen it more on the internet more, in the media, and like Twitter responses and stuff like that.
I mean, what went through your head when you first heard about it?
I was actually pretty stoked on it. You know what I mean? I hope Strikeforce still stays Strikeforce, because I'm proud to be the Strikeforce champ, and and I like fighting on the hexagon instead of that big octagon where guys could run a lot. But more than anything, I re-signed with Strikeforce, and it was a great deal I got with them, and minus the whole branding and marketing that the UFC gets, and then all of a sudden, I find out the UFC, buys them out, and I'm pretty pumped on it. Now I get the best of both worlds. So to me, it worked out in my benefit. Obviously, it's a little more cutthroat now that we're in the UFC, because I was a big fish in a smaller pond. Now I'm a pretty good-sized fish in the ocean right now, and that means I gotta perform, I gotta deliver, and I think I'll fit in really well out there. I think Dana will like me. If you look back at all my fights, I put on great shows, and I'm actually excited that I get to be exposed to the fans, and win or lose, it doesn't really matter to me. I know I'm gonna be 100% ready, in all these fights to come, and I think at the end of the day I'll prove I'm the best.
What do you think about these potential matchups that are out there now? I mean, the former WEC guys, the UFC guys, Strike.
Yeah, it's exciting, man. First of all, I'm a fan of the sport, so for me, I'm thinking like maybe Nick versus Koscheck, you know what I mean, or Fitch, and even GSP, after Jake beats them, and even Jacare, getting in there with some of those guys, Robbie Lawler getting in there with some of those guys, even Overeem versus Kane, these are the things. Then of course myself versus Frankie, or myself against any of those 55-pounders that are tough. So yeah, man, I think it's great for the sport. Some of the fighters are a little worried about like a monopoly or whatnot, but it just forces us to work a little bit harder. You know what I mean? You got to stay sharp on your game, and I feel like there's a flood of fighters in the game, but there's a high demand for some real talent out there, and I feel like you've got to work hard to be that talent. And I think these possible matchups are going to be amazing for the fans, and people are going to get all the dream fights they ever wanted.
When you were making $400 a fight, did you ever envision being on this kind of stage?
Hell no, never, man. And and I still fight. It's become a job. And it sucks because I love the sport. You know what I mean? And I've loved it. It's a leisure thing for me. I feel like it's good for my soul and whatnot. And I did it. Like I said, I did it for two fights for $500 my first time. You know what I mean? And I never saw it this way. And then all of a sudden, for me, it was a free trip to Hawaii. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, I was trying to convince my dad. Hey man, maybe I fight in Japan and I get 10 grand a fight for 3 fights. That's $30,000 a year. I'm talking. And then next thing you know, I'm here. Making pretty big money and fighting on Showtime and top 3 in the world. You know what I mean? I didn't imagine it, but I'll tell you who did. It was my boy Jake Shields. You know what I mean? My boy Jake Shields knew from out the gate that he had a goal and a mission, and I just said, I'm going along for the ride. And I liked what he was doing, and I said, hey man, I'll just be a disciple of this guy and see where it takes me. And taking beatings for him for a long time, made me the man I am today in the cage.
How did you meet Jake again? Because that's how you got into MMA.
Definitely, I met him at SS State. I wrestled out there with him, and he actually met me first. Seeking someone to go party with. He's like, hey man, I used to party pretty good at SS State and hold that school down. So he's like, hey bro, let's go party. I'm like, come on through. So I invited him over, and we partied up a little bit, and we started bullshitting about UFC, and he told me he fought, and I was like, never seen you in the UFC, buddy, and then he exposed me to Gladiator Challenge and King of the Cage, and I'm like, oh shit, I saw him fight Ferguson, old school, and then one of Chris Brennan's students, and he flips the dude off afterwards. I'm like, holy shit, my boy Jake's a badass, and I used to pop on the tape for like the chicks or our homies, just like I had mad respect for it, you know what I mean? I've loved that shit, I loved it since I was young, when I seen the Beast against Horace Gracie was my first UFC 4, I believe that was, and I've always been a fan of it, and to see a person at you know, I respect someone who just steps in the cage and fights, period, you know what I mean? It takes a lot to do that, so I just respected him so much, and you know, and he, you know, and I tried to see what I had against him too, and he pretty much busted me up, and kind of been you know, just was a disciple since then, you know, and we met at SF State, and you know, that was that, man, and you know, we're more than friends now, we're brothers, dude, because you know, we've been at it with each other, down each other's throats, and you know, we love each other so much, and it's like, yeah, he's definitely a big brother to me, you know.
If that didn't happen, if you guys aren't united through your mutual love of partying, do you think you're standing here today?
I don't think so, man. I don't think so at all, man. I think you know, the fight gods were good to me for some reason, because you know, I mean, I was a fan of pro. I mean, just when I look back on my life, I just feel like it was like kind of, yeah, I don't know, I was never like a destiny type of dude, but it just feels like it was my destiny to, like, you know, I loved pro wrestling, and one competition when I was little, I used to wrestle my friends. We used to slap box and box, and then you know, I got into high school wrestling, and my goal was to be a high school wrestling state champ, you know what I mean? And you know, my goal was over after high school. I was 18, and I was like a little crushed, not knowing unconsciously I was training for what was soon to be my career, you know what I mean? Next thing you know, I meet Jake, and he did lead me in that direction. Though I could say, right before I trained with Jake, I did started poking my head in that game. I did do grappling somewhere else in some guy's garage, and was like interested in the whole like jiu-jitsu game and triangle, a little bit of the stand-up game. But it was when Jake took me to Caesars when I was like, well, this is the real, you know, this is the real deal stuff, and you know, I want to train here a little bit, and you know, and it was just, to me at first it was just a hobby, you know what I mean? I didn't initially want to fight, but that's how I got there for free. Jake's like, he's gonna fight, you know what I mean? He's gonna fight. I was like, what the, you know, all right, cool, you know, and they used to throw me in for sparring and all that good stuff, and yeah, man, now it's here, dude, and it's great that it pays the bills, you know.
What about that ability to mix it up? Like a lot of wrestlers and grapplers, they don't have that. You know, like you don't seem afraid to throw down.
Nah, man, I take pride in being a good mix and a true mixed martial artist. And everyone asks, like, you know, what's your strength, wrestling, Muay Thai, or Jiu-Jitsu? And honestly, you know, I think I said in my interview when I first fought Kawajiri, my strength is MMA. You know, I'm an MMA fighter, and you know, my transitions are slick. You know, I can go from Jiu-Jitsu to wrestling, from wrestling to stand-up, and stand-up to shooting, and you know, shooting to sprawling to grappling. You know, and you know, and some guys get caught up in either the stand-up or this in a fight. You know, and then they, you know, some wrestlers get caught up in that. You know, and you know, and yeah, and I feel like, you know, a lot of guys, you know, they can beat me in wrestling. The best wrestler can beat me. The best jiu-jitsu guy can beat me. The best stand-up guy. But MMA is my thing. You know.
Do you feel like there's a lot more pressure on you in this fight now that, you know, the UFC is watching?
Yeah, I put pressure on myself. You know, I've been campaigning that I'm the #1 lightweight in the world, and you know, I have to make that move to make it in the sport. You know what I mean? My dad always taught me to do my talking in the field, or talking in the you know, whatever sport I play. You know, less talk and more action, and I've been that my whole life, and you know, and it's you know, I'm trying to stay true to myself, but I have to put myself out there more now, you know, because I need people to know who I am. I need to campaign it, and it's part of the sport, and I'm learning the business, and yeah, man, I willingly put this pressure on myself, and we'll see what happens, you know what I mean? But I'm excited. I'm excited, and you know, let's go. I'm ready to go for it, you know.
When you were talking about the pressure, I was talking to your dad, and he said when you told him I'm going to fight, he's like, well, you know, if you're going to get out of school, you got to get your own job. You got to take care of yourself.
Oh yeah, that's all it was, man. That's definitely it was. You know what I mean? And you know, he wanted me to stay in school, 100%. You know what I mean? And you know, and definitely by the time I was done with school, I mean, you know, my dad hooked me up. Last time I ever asked my dad for money was maybe when I was 20 years old. You know what I mean? That was the last time, and maybe it was like for $150 or something. You know what I mean? But that's the last time I ever asked for money. But he's a guy that's, you know, one time he told me, and I was trying to be a fighter, and I was like maybe 3-0 deep or something like that, and I came back from spring break, and I went to Mexico, but my boy Jake Shields went to Vegas, and he trained, and you know, maybe partied a little, but he trained out there. And my dad's like, you said you're serious, and you chose fucking Mexico over going to Vegas and training? He's like, you're weak, you know, and he makes you feel like that, you know. I'm like, I am weak, you know, and then, you know, from there on out, I'm like, you know, let's take this serious, and you know, and I've been able to train and travel the world and enjoy my life, and you know, and training involved, you know what I mean? And I feel like everything's been like that now. I travel, and I hang out with Jake, and I train, and me and my boys go somewhere, and we train, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, just kind of like the surfers, you know, trying to catch the big wave, you know, like, you know, Jacare was in town, he was the big wave, and he came to my place and trained. You know, I'm in Vegas, the big wave out there is, you know, so-and-so, I go train with them, you know, it's great, you know, so yeah, man, you know, my dad put it on me, but yeah, he's all about, you know, walking the walk, you know.
Now that Jake, you know, made the leap to the UFC, and he's getting his, you know, Strikeforce champion versus UFC champion matchup, you feel like you're destined to follow that path as well?
I've always been behind him, like it seems like a year and a half or so, you know what I mean? Like it just like for some reason, you know, my pattern is like it just like kind of right behind him. You know what I mean? And you know, he leads by example, and I just go along with it, and you know, whatever plays out, plays out. You know what I mean? And you know, I just everything seems to be playing out well, and you know, as long as I deliver, I think things will happen. You know, just the way you say.
A year and a half behind, so that puts it late 2012. You challenged for the UFC.
Yeah, man, possibly. You know what I mean? Possibly earlier. You know, I mean, that's something I anticipated. You know, like, you know, signing that contract with Strikeforce, knowing, hey, man, I signed a 6-fight deal with them. That was 2 years. I was like, man, it looks like I'm gonna have to put 2 years on hold, you know, to maybe making that leap or you know, or having that chance, you know, and I chose stability over, you know, over branding and fame, and I was okay with that, you know. But now I'm gonna get best of both worlds, maybe sooner than I thought.
Guys, last question for Gilbert.
Now that everybody's combined here, you know, under the Zuffa umbrella, you know, it seems like some teammates and friends are gonna have to start fighting each other. Do you?
No,
what do you think about that?
I mean, for me, it's like my team is not 1,000 people. You know, my team is a handful of people. You know what I mean? And I never would want to fight Nate. I would, you know, and he's the only guy that I would fight at 155 if he goes back down there. And you know, I mean, just like, I mean, because of them, I'm where I'm at today. You know, Nick, Nate, Jake. I mean, they share their secrets with me. They made me the fighter I am. It's just wrong. You know what I mean? And you know, if somehow we had a fight, you might see a good jiu-jitsu match or something like that. If somehow we got forced to fight, you might see some flying arm bars and a fun time, and maybe hear a lot of boos. I don't know, you know what I mean? But I hope that we don't have to cross that bridge, and I don't think we will, because we're not a team of 60, you know what I mean? And we don't come and go as we please, and people just don't get to walk on their team, no matter how good your talent is or no matter how much money you have. It's something like, it goes beyond the team. It's, you know, it's loyalty, it's friendship, and it's you know, it's something you got to earn, and it's a blessing to be a part of. So you know, I don't know, man. I mean, Dana White's is you know, he's the man, and you know, I would never tell him what to do or what, you know, but I'd really ask him and beg him for never to put me in that situation.